Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 23 of the Giant Zone, where, of course, you've got your co-host, Steve the Banker.
Going on.
And then you've got yours truly, Carl, Fly Guy. Before we get into our guest tonight, I just want to remind everybody, if you're watching for the first time, if you're listening for the first time, if you like to watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to build up our subscriptions. Sorry about that, Steve. And it really helps us to continue to bring you guys good content. And if you download any of the streaming services, we only ask you to please give us a 5-star rating on those as well, because again, like a subscription, it just helps us to continue to bring you guys more content, more shows. So we thank you for that as well. Tonight, we have a special guest with us. We've got one of our followers on the show with us tonight, Andrew. Andrew, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
There you go. So Andrew, for the people that aren't familiar with you, why don't you give us a little background about yourself and how you became a Giants fan?
Yeah, well, I'm originally a Jersey boy, so I grew up in Jersey in the 80s and all during the Big Blue Wrecking Crew days. So great time to really get into the Giants fandom. Suffered through the Dave Brown years to really enjoy the Eli years, and now we're back to suffering again. So, like I said, Jersey boy, born and raised. Now down here in Florida in the Tampa Bay area. Had to get away from the cold. Couldn't deal with that anymore.
Yep. It's the same reason I moved down. I moved down here 4 years, but I'm on the East Coast, and Steve is also down here, South Florida, but he's been here a lot longer. So 3 Florida boys bringing it home tonight for the Giants, and it's good to know that. So Steve, and you mentioned some very difficult times, the Dave Brown era, but then there was also some great times in there as well. So it's been a roller coaster, for lack of a better term. But what about game day traditions? Do you have any special traditions that you like to follow, you and your family, on game days?
Well, mostly right now it's been drinking as much whiskey to forget about the games as possible, because the last couple of years, let's be honest, it's almost unwatchable. I have to try to, pin my hands behind my back and make sure I don't throw anything at the TV, that kind of fun times there. But I mean, mostly overall, it's just relax, try to enjoy the game, and, kind of forget about life for a few hours.
Yeah, I hear you. It is a good escape. Well, not always good, but it's an escape. We'll call it that. Anyway. So Andrew, you kind of you gave us some really good things to think about here tonight. So why don't we get it kicked off? What's your first question or topic that you want to cover tonight?
So my first question really is Brian Daboll going to be the answer? Is he really the offensive guru everybody thinks he really is?
And Steve, I'm gonna lead with this, if that's okay.
Yeah, go with it, man.
So what I did is I did a deep dive on Brian Daboll, and I've got some notes in front of me. So he was a Cleveland offensive coordinator in 09 and 2010, and their rankings, as you noted, Andrew, they were 32nd in 09, and then they were 29th in 2010. But in order to kind of formulate an answer to this question, I wanted to do a deep dive and say, okay, what did he have to work with? So I went back. His offensive starters in 2009 were Brady Quinn, Jamal Lewis, Lawrence Vickers as his 2 running backs, Josh Cribbs as his 1 receiver, Mohamed Massaquoi, as the other receiver. His tight end was Robert Royal. His line actually wasn't bad. Joe Thomas, Eric Steinbach, Alex Mack, Floyd Womack, and John St. Clair. So he didn't have a bad offensive line. Probably maybe at that time on the level of maybe where we are now, maybe a little better, I think. Because we've got some rookies. They had 1 rookie in 09, which was Alex Mack. And he turned out to be, if I'm correct, Steve, he turned out to be a pretty good offensive lineman, did he not?
Yeah, Pro Bowler.
Right. So, in 09, Brady Quinn didn't exactly light it up. Jamal Lewis, 143 rushes, 500 yards. Keep the running back in mind. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say. The big receiver there was Josh Cribbs. I'm sorry. Josh Cribbs had 20 for 135 and 1 touchdown, but he also had 55 rushes for 381 and a touchdown. Mohamed Massaquoi, as a rookie, 34 catches, 624 yards, 3 TDs. And then Robert Royal, nothing. He didn't do anything special. So he didn't have that much to work with in 2009. Okay, so of course, as the offensive coordinator, is he going to take the hit for that? Yes, he is. But still, Cleveland in 2010, Colt McCoy, Peyton Hillis. But that was the year that Peyton Hillis went nuts. 270 for 1,100 yards and 11 touchdowns, plus 61 catches, 477 yards and 2 touchdowns. Okay. His receiver, Josh Cribbs, 23 catches, 292, 1 TD. Massaquoi again, 36 catches, 2 TDs. And he also added Brian Robisky to the mix, 29 catches, 3 touchdowns. And his tight end was Benjamin Watson, 68 catches, 700 plus yards, 3 touchdowns. So, and again, the same offensive line. So they had, the quarterback was still terrible, but they had some new weapons. But again, that his rank only went up 3 from 32nd to 29. Okay. So that was 2009, 2010. 2011, he was the Miami offensive coordinator. His starting offensive team in Miami, Matt Moore at quarterback, Reggie Bush as his running back, 216 rushes for 1,086 yards, 6 touchdowns, plus he caught 43 passes, almost 300 yards, 1 touchdown. Charles Clay is his fullback, nothing special. His receiver is Brian Hartline, 35 catches. Brandon Marshall had 81 catches that year for 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns. And his tight end was Anthony Fasano. Offensive line, Jake Long, Richie Incognito, Mike Pouncey, Vernon Carey, Mark Colombo. Again, decent offensive line. I wouldn't say it was bad, but in the weapons department, not too much outside of Reggie Bush. Although, again, we did mention Brandon Marshall. Okay.
Clay ended up making a Pro Bowl.
I'm sorry?
Charles Clay ended up making a Pro Bowl.
Yes, he did. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Was it that year? I don't think it was that year, but yes, he eventually did. You're right. Okay. And then finally in 2012, and I know I'm running on, but it needs to be discussed here. That's why. He was the offensive coordinator with Kansas City. His starting offense, Matt Castle at quarterback, 1,700 yards, 6 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Jamal Charles at running back. That was a big year for Jamal Charles. 285 rushes, 1,500 yards, 5 touchdowns. Caught 35 passes, also had a touchdown. His receivers, Jonathan Baldwin, 20 catches. Dwayne Bowe, if you remember him, 59 catches, 800 yards, 3 touchdowns. Tight end was Steve Maneri and Tony Mokow. I can never say the name right. Offensive, and again, combine those 2 tight ends, caught 38 passes. Offensive line, Brandon Albert, Jeff Allen, Ryan Leah, John Asamoah, and Eric Winston. Okay. So why am I bringing this all up? I don't think he had great weapons to work with those 3 years, those 4 years, actually, 2 in Cleveland and 1. So then we go to Buffalo. He became the offensive coordinator in Buffalo. So bear with me here. Buffalo's Josh Allen stats since Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator. In 2018, 2,074 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 67.9 quarterback ranking. All right. His completion percentage was 52.8. 2019, completion percentage was 58.8. 3,089 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Touchdowns up, interceptions down. 85.3 quarterback rating. 2020, completion percentage of 70, 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. So again, touchdowns up, interceptions down. 107.2 quarterback rating. And then in 2021, 63.3 completion percentage, 4,400 yards, 36 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 92.2. In those same 4 years, sacks allowed. Okay. So in 2018, they were tied for 17th with 3 teams with 41. 2019, they were 15th. They allowed 40. 2020, they were 9th with only 27. 2021, again, 22nd, 27th, and they were tied for second in the league. I'm not going to go through their offensive starters. We pretty much know their offensive starters while he was in Buffalo. So where am I going with this? Do I think he's the guy? Yes. I think when you give him weapons and you build an offense around him with weapons, I think the numbers prove out that he knows how to utilize them. You've seen Josh Allen's numbers go up. What I like is that he's had running backs, that he's developed running backs, not just a quarterback, but running backs, which says to me, Saquon is going to be used very, very heavily in this offense as well. So those are just my thoughts. Yes, he did have a good quarterback coach in Ken Dorsey as well. And I've got to give him credit for Josh Allen's development. Do I think Mike Kafka is going to be Ken Dorsey? Possibly in time. Again, the game has evolved as well, so I think they look at things differently. I think they're going to try to get the most that we've seen out of Daniel Jones this year. He's got a better offensive line. Can the offense, there's health concerns, which we're going to get into as well. But I think we got the guy that can get this team going in the right direction. And I think the numbers prove that. If you give him weapons and you build an offense according to his scheme, he's going to make the most of it. Steve?
So I kind of take your question, Andrew, and I divide it into just a couple of mini parts. And I'm not going to do as much of a deep dive as Carl. I'm kind of taking more of the 40,000 foot view with this. I know that's unusual with me. I usually get pretty granular. I think the first thing when I think, everybody knows my handle, my nickname's the banker. I've obviously been in banking in the corporate world. And when I think about the great leaders in the corporate world, you very, very, unless it's like a tech company with a tech founder, and eventually a lot of them end up leaving and hiring an outside CEO anyway, most CEOs have made a rotation. So most CEOs, I don't know if you guys know this and people out there know this, but most CEOs were a COO. A very large percentage were actually the CFO first. And the reason they do that is they want a better understanding of each part of the company, the financials, the operations, whatever, self-explanatory. And I draw an analogy. I think it's a great metaphor for coaching as well. I don't think it's any different. When you say, is he an offensive guru? I don't see there's many gurus in the NFL today anyway. Other than Andy Reid, back in the day, it was Bill Walsh. There's not many guys who are like truly changed the way we think about offense in the NFL. And I think what happens is there's guys that come from those trees, the Andy Reid tree prior to that, and he came from the Bill Walsh tree, as we all know. And so what they do is they update it and they change it and they modify it. When we think, in baseball, I think of Joe Torre. Joe Torre was not a good coach until the Yankees hired him, and all of a sudden he won all these World Series. My analogy, and more relevant in the NFL, is Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick was in Cleveland first. We all know he wasn't successful in Cleveland. I believe they made the playoffs once, actually. Andy Reid, he didn't win a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. He had to leave, right? Bruce Arians. Oh, Bruce Arians, Tampa Bay. Yeah, of course, he's a genius. He gets Tom Brady. Bruce Arians didn't do squat in Arizona. I mean, these all help build experiences, and I think they're learning lessons. Mike Shanahan is probably the greatest example of this. Mike Shanahan, a lot of people have now forgotten, was actually an offensive guru. He was a guru before Andy Reid. He transformed a lot of the way the offense is played in the NFL. He started coaching in 1978 in the NFL. He was offensive coordinator 4 times before he was a head coach. He was a head coach. He lost that job. Then he was an offensive coordinator 3 more times. And then he was the head coach of Denver, 1995 to 08, won 2 Super Bowls. We all know the story. So I think it's valid to ask, is he a guru? Is he the guy? But honestly, I think he's put together a tremendous staff. I think that a lot of these guys, like Josh Allen's, the quarterbacks in the NFL, are going to say great things about all the coaches they had. You don't want to burn a bridge. The truth is, a guy like Ken Dorsey, for example, probably really did do some great things for him. But if you watch what he said about Davis Webb, if I put his comments side by side, Davis Webb was more important than Ken Dorsey even. So how much of that is true and how much of that is just him trying to say nice things about guys that were all part of the team that made Josh Allen who he is today. So I think that he's done some amazing things. When he was in Cleveland, he had a dysfunctional situation. They had a new GM, they had a new head coach when he was hired. That was his first time as offensive coordinator. Dante Stallworth was arrested for hit and run, killing someone, and then leaving the scene. We all know what happened. He was, if I remember correctly, their number one receiver. He went to jail. So he had a tremendous amount of turmoil. Going into this season, they actually had Derek Anderson as their number one. I believe Brady Quinn took over.
Right.
That's not exactly a great situation to go in. Those are your two options at quarterback. When he was in Kansas City, he had Scott Pioli and Romeo Crennel, who both had great careers in other places. But we all know how that ended in Kansas City. They were flying banners every Sunday over the stadium to get rid of Scott Pioli. They couldn't wait to run him and Romeo Crennel out of town. It was total. So why do I bring those things up? Because I look at it as dysfunction. So I think what he's probably learned is what it takes to be successful. It's not just a system, but it's the right staff and it's the right talent. I think it's rare that you can have one without the other and win. So for me, I'm incredibly excited. I think his experiences in his prior stops, including most recently Buffalo, I think even in Buffalo, people got on him for running the ball too much last season. He finally kind of turned it around. I'm excited because he seems to be the right guy. He says the right things. We haven't played a game yet. But I'm excited that this is not, listen, my final thought, Sean McVay. Give me another Sean McVay out there. Who? Stefanski in Cleveland. Oh my God, he's a guru. He's done nothing in Cleveland. What have they done? Have they gone to a Super Bowl? Sean McVay is maybe the only one, youngest head coach in history, but I'll ask you guys both this real quick. How many years did it take him to win his Super Bowl now? Do you know?
Was it 5?
Yeah, I think it's 5
years.
Yeah.
People have been talking for 5 years. Oh my God, Sean McVay. It took him 5 years. It's not like he did it overnight.
And he got there with Jared Goff. Think about that too.
Well, they didn't win the Super Bowl with Jared Goff.
But he got to the game.
But he, as brilliant as he is, and he is, what did they have to do, though, to win the Super Bowl? They did something no NFL team has ever done. They basically traded away all their draft picks now, year after year, and every year put it on the line with free agents. I think they're crazy. To me, that's not how you build a team. Carl and the listeners know I love team construction. It's one of my hobbies. I enjoy that, salary cap, all that. But you know what? He proved me wrong. But that's not Sean McVay. That's the general manager and ownership saying, so I think let's hold our horses. This guy has a tremendous resume. And much like Joe Torre when he came to the Yankees, much like a lot of these other coaches in the NFL who maybe made some mistakes in other places, how many Sean McVays are there? There's not many. I think this guy has shown that he understands offense, a modern offense. He's put together a great staff. He's in sync with the general manager. I'm excited. They haven't played a game yet, but I think, I don't know if he's a guru, but I think we don't need a guru. I think we need somebody who has a tremendous system, a modern offense, and understands how to put guys in position to succeed and put a roster, but also a coaching staff together. And I think he seems to have done that. What do you think, Andrew?
I guess my concern overall is, while I agree he didn't have the best offensive weapons around him for much of his time as the offensive coordinator, we're talking ranking 1 year 32nd. Mm-hmm. How many teams are in the league again?
32.
So that's an issue when I look at that. So, part of the question, I guess, for me is, was Josh Allen's ascension a product of Daboll, or was Daboll a product of his ascension? And we're not going to know that, obviously, until we get him in here, get everything rolling, and see where it goes. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying, oh, he's not going to be the guy no matter what. But I think we all went in with rose-colored glasses last time with Judge. Mm-hmm. Judge had that press conference, and we were already like, oh, let's new Bill Parcells in the house. We got to see what this guy is. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying he's not going to be the guy. Let's see if he is the guy, is what I'm saying, because there's been some great years there in Buffalo, and he did some great things. But, when you talk about some of the guys you mentioned, the names you mentioned earlier as great coaches, do you think those guys would have ranked 32nd or ranked 23rd as offensive coordinators in the league?
Well,
let me ask you a question back.
That's a general question. That's a tough one. Go ahead, Steve.
Let me ask you a question. I don't know what you do for a living. It's not really relevant to what we're talking about. It may be none of my business, and that's okay. But when you think about what you were doing in 2009 compared to what you're doing today, if you were doing the same job, and I don't know if you were, I would hope that you are light years ahead in your career and your skill set today than what you were in 2009. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have also been successful in 2009, depending on what you were doing. But hopefully you are, if you were to interview for a job, if you were to come to me, I would say, wow. But hopefully in the 13 years since then, you've built up tremendous experiences, things that you've learned. So listen, the guy doesn't need me to defend him. And I'm just thinking of it a different way, a little perspective.
And you both touch on something, and Andrew, I understand your thinking and your point about, well, yeah, he was that his first year as an offensive coordinator in the NFL in 2009, and he was 32nd. Yeah. Okay. We could say, all right, he wasn't good. We could say it was beginner, getting your feet wet, so on and so forth. So in as much as I understand that, Steve touched on something which also brings it together for me, is that 13 years ago, the game was much different than it is now. It was played different. All right. Things were done differently. They were thinking different. The offenses ran different. That was more back then, was more of a running league than it was a passing league.
Yeah, you could lock up a wide receiver still back then.
Pretty much. Right. And Steve, what you said is that he looks like he can handle a modern offense. What we didn't have and what we have now, and I'm going to just say the GM. So we had Gettleman, and I'm just going to make this as a reference point. So everybody calm down with the Gettleman tweets. But where I'm going with this is that we had a GM for the past 4 years, I think, that the game had already passed by. We've got a head coach now that's evolved with the game. So what I'm trying to say is I don't expect a 32nd ranked offense. I will be shocked if we have the 32nd ranked offense in the league this year.
Carl, let me ask Andrew a question before we move on to another one of your questions. What do you think about Kafka? Are you excited about Kafka as his OC? Andrew?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know who the question was for. Honestly, I'm kind of interested to see how the whole thing's going to mix. I mean, you have two great offensives, and you have people that were integral parts of both of those now mixed together. Right. So the question I think we're going to find out pretty early based on how it's run is this going to be Daboll's offense? Is this going to be Kafka's offense? Is it going to be a mixture of the two, which is what I'm really hoping for? I mean, look at that game those two had and the postseason run for the Bills. I mean, we ever have an offense within the next couple of years that'll take time to build with either one of those offenses going now on our team, I'll be a very happy guy.
It's true. And I think you're right, Andrew. I think you touched on something that's probably going to be true. I think you're going to get a blend of both. And think about that. Kafka was being groomed to be the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. We all know how that offense runs. So if we get a taste of that, along with what he did in Buffalo, yeah, I think our offense is set up to be much better, much more productive. So,
Andrew, what do you think success, before we move on to your next question, only because we're talking about Daboll and of course Shane as well, what to you is success this season? Because Carl and I have talked about this quite a bit on prior shows. I think it's relevant to your question. For me, so to add context to why I'm asking this, to me, success is like 3 or 4 things roughly. Do they identify new weapons? Right now, we really don't have many impact players. We've talked about that. Do we modernize the offense? Blah, 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 blah. But the number one thing above and beyond all of that is we need to find out, is Daniel Jones the guy? Doesn't mean he's going to make a Pro Bowl, but like, is he the guy? Because we don't know if we're going to get a top quarterback. There's all these things we could talk about, right? So for me, what does success look like? To me, success looks like a modern offense. They've developed some young weapons, maybe guys that were even drafted by the prior regime. But we finally have an answer on Daniel, and it may not be the answer we want, but we like, wow, okay. What does success look like for you? Because it seems you're questioning, is he really the offensive guru? So what does success look like to you before we move on, if that's okay?
I would say success for us definitely is going to be, and I hate to ever say this as a goal, but I'm going to say it as a goal for this team this year, is to just not be an embarrassment at this point. I mean, after last year, QB sneaking when you're, that far away from the, like, what are we doing here? I mean, it's just the whole season was just, it was an embarrassment as a Giants fan. So, we can't go in and expect this all of a sudden to be the Bills of last year or the Chiefs of last year. That's impossible. But the thing to me is we have to go into this going, okay, we see improvement. We're not an embarrassment anymore. And we know what Daniel Jones is, whether it's good, whether it's bad. That's not on Daboll. That's not on Shane. That's, we didn't handpick this guy. That was a prior regime. I won't use his name. You guys use his name before. I won't use that name anymore. He's Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno, okay? We don't talk about Bruno. So as far as I'm concerned, that's what it is. Just not be an embarrassment and know what we have in Daniel Jones. We know, are we moving on or are we building around?
Gotcha.
Interesting. All right. So I'm not going to go into what I think success is. I've again, like Steve mentioned, we've discussed that numerous times, and I'm going to stand by my story. I'm not going to change my story in that now. So why don't we get into your next question there, Andrew?
All right. So the next question is, can any of our offensive weapons stay healthy?
Steve, I'll let you start with this one.
So I have some very specific but very succinct comments on this and thoughts when I think about that question, because that's probably been one of the greatest sources of frustration, I think, for all of us as fans. Even if we have someone who's having a pretty off to a good start for the year and we have all this optimism, then they get hurt. And it's not just once. And then some guys are hurt or are they injured, right? We've talked about that. Football is the one sport. Are you hurt or are you injured?
Right.
Look, I give both sides. I always do, to a fault. On the one hand, I think it's without question the Giants and Jets play on the worst turf in the NFL. I think that's without question. Does that matter? I think it does. I think it sucks. I mean, it's, I don't know that they can do grass there, but you know what? They do grass in Green Bay. Why not? It's just, I think, and that particular turf seems to lead to just far more injuries than other artificial turf around the league. Now, that being said, every team has injuries. So it's not, and I think a lot of fans, Giant fans, like, oh, only our team. No, every team has injuries. And guess what? Every team has number one wide receivers go down. We're not the only team. I can even think of a couple right off the top of my head. But I think the problem is the nature of the injuries. They're not just soft tissue, and the timing of them. I mean, we get guys injured, like multiple impact players, and I use that word loosely because I just said a breath ago we don't have a lot of impact players, but like guys who are supposed to have an impact on our offense. Kenny Galladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney last year, Saquon Barkley, multiple years with injuries. But I also think there's something to having played sports myself. I know you guys both, Carl, I know you have, Andrew. I don't know if you've played organized, but sometimes I think guys get injured when they're trying to do too much. And I think that looking at that team the last 2 years in particular, I don't think it's a coincidence. Saquon was fine his first year. I mean, he was injured in camp a little bit, but he ended up having an amazing all-time great rookie year. There's something to players feeling like they don't get on the field enough. When they do get on the field, they don't get the chances they want. They're not in the offense they want to be in. They're not in an offense that puts them in a good position. I think there's something to the fact that sometimes I think these players are trying to do too much. So is it the training staff? Is it the turf? Daboll has talked about that. And Shane have talked about having a modern training staff and a modern program for the players, off-season training, using analytics to understand how their bodies move and how each player is different, and kinetics and how to take advantage of that, strength training, flexibility. So can any offensive weapon stay healthy? I hope so, man, because at the end of the day, no team in any sport wins a championship unless they're blessed with health. Doesn't matter how good you are on paper, but I think it was important to change everything about this team. But they kept like two coaches, a secondary coach, special teams coach, and maybe a running back coach. I can't remember. I think they needed to gut everything about this organization, and they seem to have done that. So I'm crossing my fingers that that's going to lead to also positive changes with this as well.
So I agree. And I know it sounds like an excuse. I agree on the turf issue. I do. But one thing I will say, the two major injuries that Saquon has sustained, One was in Tampa on grass. One was in Chicago on grass. So, in as much as, does the turf play a factor? Sure it does. Now, are you injured or are you just hurt? Back in the day when the Giants were going to 4 Super Bowls, these guys were playing with their fingers falling off and being held together by tape. I mean, Lawrence Taylor had one of his all-time great games with separated shoulder, I believe, that was
Dislocated shoulder.
wrapped. So, I think there's some difference. There's so much money invested in these players now that I think a lot of these players are like, "Oh, I gotta protect my brand and I gotta protect my money." So, I think the mindset on players nowadays is, and again, I think we all knew as the year went on last year that Joe Judge wasn't coming back. The longer the year got, the more obvious that became. So I wonder if a lot of these players were just saying, "Hey, you know what? I don't want to go out there risk injury if this guy's not coming back," and then
That's true.
Start the year hurt with a new regime. So I think there is some of that. I think the mindset of these players is different. It's more of a me thing than a we thing nowadays. And I think as much as I don't like that, it is what it is. So I'm not going to make excuses. I do think there is an issue with the turf, but can they stay healthy? I think the bigger question is, do they want to play for this guy?
Yeah, good point.
And if they want to play for this guy, they will play through injury. And you will see some of these missed games go down. Again, look, you blow out a knee. I understand that. But some of these nagging injuries, and I'm not going to name players, I'm not going to go into it, but I think you won't see as many of these nagging injuries that take so long to come back. So I think that's the deeper question is, do they want to play for this guy?
That's a good point.
Andrew?
I think the thing that really I question, and again, we're going back to the old regime as much as I hate to do it here, but Kenny Galladay who misses 11 games that we hand him a huge contract. So shocker, he gets injured again. This is a guy who does get injured. We go ahead and draft Kadarius Toney, who missed 9 games twice while he was in Florida. I mean, going into his last year there, he was a question mark for the team overall because they still didn't know what they had in him. And now I look at him going, okay, well, I don't know. We have in him now after his first year. He had a great game against the Cowboys. That was like half his stats for the entire season. Mm-hmm. So we don't know we have in him still. And is he going to be that guy who's going to be just constantly having these nagging injuries throughout his career? I don't know. But now we also go ahead and draft a receiver this year who I know a lot of people think drafting Robinson was, I think, a reach by some people's mind. I don't think it's a reach personally. That guy lit up the SEC. And he was the guy you had to stop. If you had to stop this guy and you couldn't, in that, that part of college football, which is basically the minors of the NFL at this point, that's a guy I want on my team, but he's only 185 pounds. Is that going to last in the NFL? Is that a body that's going to be able to withstand the hits, especially if we use him like he was used in college as, almost that half running back, half receiver, doing the screens and the short routes? He's going to take a lot of hits. So, I think I question part of how we set up this team overall, full of players that in my mind are injury prone. I mean, leaving Sterling Shepard even out of this, we all know what Shep is. We all love Shep. I think he's proven he's a gamer when he's on the field, but he just can't stay on the field. So, and obviously Saquon, that's a running back. That's just the way they are. They don't stay healthy. That's why you don't draft him number 2, but I won't get into that. That's already been talked about enough. But I mean, we're just not set up with a guy that I can sit out there and go, okay, I can't say there's a guy who's out there who's, not that there's a lot of these, but the tumors and the candidates we had back in the day that you can go and say, this guy's going to be here on the field for all 16 games. And he may not be the all-pro receiver. He may not be the Pro Bowl receiver, but he's the guy you can count on to be there to make that catch when needed. He's the guy who's going to be on the field all those games. We don't have one player of all of the skill position, players we have that I can trust at that. Don't get me started on tight end. We don't know what we got there, but I mean, all these guys.
So look, you make a good argument, Andrew. I'm not gonna say you don't. You know what comes to mind? There's some players that come to my mind when you bring up Kadarius Toney and Robinson. How Julian Edelman was not the biggest guy in the field. Okay. Wes Welker was not the biggest guy in the field.
And Danny Amendola.
Not the biggest guy in the field. Exactly right. And then Kenny Golladay. So Kenny Golladay has proven he can be a big time guy. Kenny Golladay, in my opinion, never fought for a ball once last year. So again, that goes back to where's his head? The hell with the body. Where's his head? So I understand what you're saying. So I'm going to counter saying, I think part of the problem, I don't think they exactly knew how to utilize Kadarius Toney last year as well. All right. And that's why I'm excited. And I go back to the first question about Daboll and Kafka. I think we've got the guys that are going to get the best out of these guys and put them, and they both said in the press conference, we're going to put these players in the positions for them to be successful. They're going to utilize, they're going to open up this offensive game plan. They're going to spread this offense. So I expect better things out of all of them this year. I hope. I could be completely wrong, but I expect them. I don't think we need these guys, or the size of some of these guys that we mentioned is going to be as big a factor as we may think it is, or has that we've seen.
Let me give you guys both a little nugget, food for thought. And you've heard this a million times in your life. Winning cures a lot.
Yoosh.
I think, and we'll get to I hope we have time. We'll get to the season schedule. It's becoming a tradition here, Andrew. I'd love to hear what you think about our upcoming schedule, wins, losses, whatever. But one of the things we've talked about with other guests, and we've come to realize, is it's going to be important how we start off this season. And it's a lot to ask, right? New staff, a lot of new players, young. We have maybe one of the youngest squads in the entire league. I get it. But that first 4 to 6 games are some winnable games there. And I think what a difference it would be over the prior 3, 4, 5, I mean, really since 2016, for the team to get off to a decent start. A lot of the things you're talking about, you are hitting the nail on the head. But if you see listen, man, come on. You mean to tell me any of these guys had any respect for Garrett and his 1989 offense? These guys were not in a position. Everything was fighting and 5-yard curls. And,
right.
Daboll's talked about it in some of his pressers and interviews. They have fun, and winning obviously is a big part of having fun, but he wants these kids. He understands he seems to understand the modern athlete, put them in position, have some fun, get some stats under their belts, but get some wins, right? Pile up maybe 2 or 3 wins in the first 6 games. Think about that. I know that's like, can you imagine the difference in that locker room versus the prior 2, even 3 years with Shermer? I think a lot of the things you're talking about, you're accurate, but I also think some of those things can be cured by winning. And I'm not saying winning 15 games. I mean, but just
competitive.
Win.
Even if they're just competitive and they're let's say if they're not winning, but they're close games, they're in these games. To your point, Steve, I think you're going to see more output, and you're going to see these guys playing for some of these injuries.
Andrew, does that resonate with you, what I'm saying?
I think it does for the people that, as we're talking about the whole hurt or injured thing, for the hurt people. Yeah. My concern is, I guess, do we have enough people that are not injured? I mean, yeah,
that's why you try to have a good draft, because that comes into depth, and that comes into building the foundation, which is something we spoke about. What's the goal for this year? Let's build the foundation. And I think that what you just said leads right into why we hope that they're doing so.
It made me think of like one of the great, to me, still doesn't get enough credit. One of the greatest wide receivers of all time. Like for me, easily top 10, maybe top 5 is Terrell Owens. He played on one leg in that Super Bowl. He played on one leg.
And he dominated.
McNabb is over there puking his guts out. This guy's playing on one leg. But the reason we think about that and go, oh my God, yeah, that was because there aren't a lot of guys that do that. you know?
Yep.
And he was injured. He wasn't just hurt. My man was injured. And yes, it was the biggest game, but I don't know. I think it's just getting harder and harder to find guys like that. But I think if you have a head coach and a staff and a system where they believe in it, and they're having fun and they're putting up stats and they're putting up W's, I think it makes a difference, at least with these younger teams, you know?
What else do you have, Andrew?
I'm sorry.
Next question.
Okay, so we got, will Wink change his style if the cornerback group needs help, unlike last year with the Ravens?
Carl, that's you.
Okay, so here's where I'm at. So will he change his style? I'm going to answer that generally, and I'm going to say yes, because he's got a habit of hiding his actual scheme, creating mismatches, disguising what he's really trying to do. So I think yes. Now, I'm going to take that a step further. What I did is I went back. So Wink was a coach in Baltimore since 2012 to 2022. He became their defensive coordinator in 2018. So I went back and looked at their defensive rankings. So in the years prior to 2018, in 2012, they were the 17th ranked defense in the NFL. In 2013, they were 12th. In 2014, they were 10th. In 2015, they were 13th. 2016, they were 7th. And then 2017, they were 11th. The one thing that stuck out to me on all of those defenses, believe it or not, was that their passing defense was not very good, and it brought their rankings down. In 2018, he became the defensive coordinator. So I've got numbers from 2018, 2019, 2020. We all know what happened last year. They had a lot of injuries. They weren't that great last year. In 2018, they ranked 3rd overall in defense. In 2019, they were 4th. In 2020, they were 2nd. So when he became the guy, he changed the style, he changed the system, and it impacted the defense considerably. Okay, they were, in all of those years that he was a linebackers coach, they were in the top 10 once out of 6 years. In 3 of the 4 years that he was a defensive coordinator, they were top 5. So yes, I do believe. Now again, the secondary, if the secondary either doesn't come together or we've got injuries, it's going to impact. Obviously is. Now there are some rookies that they drafted, and actually both rookies, I think, are going to do very well. So you've got Cordell Flott. I don't think he's going to start. I think he needs to add some muscle. But I think Julian Levin, I brought this up on the last show. I think he's going to be that nickel corner. He's not going to play. He's not playing safety. They have him as a cornerback. Sorry. So he's already making some changes there. I can't remember the kid they drafted out of Baylor, but he's supposed to be a ball hawk. So I think, yeah, to answer the question, I think if the secondary falls, yeah, we may suffer, but I think Wink is going to continue to make changes, continue to disguise things, and try to confuse the offense so we're not so vanilla. I think you're going to see some blitzing, which we haven't seen. You know, Patrick Graham kept saying he was going to blitz, but you know, I was getting ready to collect Social Security before he ever threw a blitz in there. So I still expect the defense to be improved as well, and I'm very comfortable with what he's going to do and what he can do. Steve?
I don't think he's going to change, and I'm okay with that. I love it. I liked Patrick Graham a lot, but I got to tell you, just my own philosophy in football and playing defense, and I was a defensive player when I was a kid. I was a DN, D tackle. Like, to me, human nature, you know, like he likes to say, pressure breaks pipes. except, and I said this on the last couple shows, I think the top 10 to maybe 15 even quarterbacks in the NFL are going to have a field day against us, even if our secondary ends up being a good secondary. That we don't have a premier defense in all likelihood, even if a bunch of guys, even if all the things fall into place. But to me, it's about what he's going to be building. And I think that there's very few quarterbacks, even Tom Brady, we saw what happened in the Super Bowl against us twice, right, guys? You pressure, he's a human being. These guys are all human beings. None of them are machines. They're not robots. They may seem like it. Aaron Rodgers will make a mistake from time to time, right? He throws interceptions. Pressure breaks pipes. I think that what's unique about him is his ability to disguise that pressure is very, very unique. Listen, I don't want to see any of those zero blitzes. I don't want to see where it's like he throws the kitchen sink and just everybody rushes. That's crazy. I think when they interviewed him, it was probably one of their top questions that they asked him. Hey, we saw what happened last year in Baltimore. We saw how things went when you didn't have your top cover corners out there on an island like you usually have. What are you going to do if you come over here and all these young kids, nobody appears to be, I mean, we like Adoree', don't get me wrong, but what if nobody, I'm sure they asked him that. So I said earlier that I think there were 2 or 3 coaches we kept. Obviously our special teams coach. I think our DB coach was one of the, was it Jerome Henderson? That was one.
I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
He knows these kids. He's been developing them. He's been doing a good job. Look, we have some talent down there. I love this kid Robinson. He's so physical. He's supposed to be a slot corner. And when he was finally healthy at the end of last year, they played him on the boundary and he actually played great. He gave up a couple big catches, but I mean, a lot of guys would have given up some of those catches. I think we have some talent in our secondary, but you make a good point. They're young and there's a lot to be nervous about. And Adoree' doesn't always stay healthy, right? No. So is he going to change? I don't think he is. I think what he's going to do is he's going to work hard to disguise some of the schemes, and the blitz is going to come even from places that people aren't used to seeing it. It's all about making that other quarterback feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So listen, if we meet our match in 5 of the 17 games, that's going to suck. We're going to get torn apart, but that still leaves 12 other games where, you know what, we're not playing one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, and our defense is going to cause some turnovers, and it's going to be a hell of a lot more fun than we've had as fans the last couple of years.
What do you think, Andrew?
I think a good part of the defense improving that you mentioned earlier, you got to keep in mind also he got Marcus Peters during that time period as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, you get an elite corner, of course, all of a sudden the defense gets a whole lot better, especially when you're in a blitz heavy scheme like he is. That last year they didn't have him, obviously. They had obviously 6 games to end the season, 25th ranked overall defense. They actually led the league in completions over 20 yards, completions over 40 yards. They let up big plays because when you don't have the corners to cover, it's game on at that point for not just for the great quarterbacks, but even the average quarterbacks, just the guys been around for a couple of years that can read coverage and see what's going on. You mentioned Robinson. I like Robinson a lot. I've done not a lot of experience yet, but I'm kind of curious to see what he does. I think he'll get that second corner spot. I think the best question, though, really as far as what's going to happen, though, when Adoree' gets hurt. He gets hurt every year. That's what he does. So you touched on that before. So, we don't even know who's going to be that second corner now when Adoree' goes down. And now Robinson becomes the first corner. He's got to change, I think, for us to really have a successful defense this year to a certain degree because of that. Remember Patrick Graham the first couple of years last year wanted to go man style because that's what he wants to do. Couldn't do it with the team we had. And he changed, and the defense got better. So I guess only time will tell. Will Wink also go, hold on a second. I don't have the person to do what I want to do right now. I got to adjust this. And I really hope he does.
The flip side of that is, all right, there's going to be injuries. All teams have them. Some of our guys do have a history. I'm just curious to see that as the season goes on and these guys start becoming more comfortable in the system, I want to see how much improvement takes place. I want to see if as the year goes on, you really start to see this defense come together and you see these guys, what we didn't see last year where we couldn't cover. Now they're covering. Now there isn't as much space. Maybe those tight ends aren't killing us with the seam passes anymore because we haven't found a tight end that we like to cover in years. So I'm very curious to see that as they get comfortable in his system and his schemes, if that is also going to lend itself to overall improvement.
And just remember one other thing, like when we won those Super Bowls, the last two with our Spagnuolo's NASCAR, and what they put together. Now we don't have the makings of that. I'll be the first to admit. We didn't have great secondaries. We had some nice players. Corey Webster was great. He was fun to watch. But we didn't, it's not exactly like we were busting at the seams with Pro Bowl corners on those teams. I mean, it was all about what you can do, pressure. If you're only giving the quarterback 2 seconds or less and you're cutting it from 3.4 to 2, he's got to make a decision that much quicker. The wide receivers aren't getting the chance to run those deep routes. And I say all that because don't forget, I agree with you, Andrew. I think most pundits especially are focusing on last year, Baltimore, Wink. You see, you were exposed without your top corners. He also lost Matt Judon. Matt Judon was his top pass rusher, went to New England. Look, he only had 6 sacks the year before, but I think in 2020, there were other guys that benefited from having Judon. He started being the person that was focused on. He went to New England last year, had 12.5 sacks. I mean, the guy's a hell of a pass rusher.
Yeah.
So, I agree that he lost Peters. He lost his great corners that he had, which afforded him the ability to rush the passer, but he also lost his best pass rusher. So I'm going to stand by what I said. I think we're going to get exposed in a bunch of games this year, and it's okay. It's okay. I think if we can just have a middle of the pack offense and a middle of the pack defense, we can win 9 or 10 games. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you look at how close some of those games were last year and how horrible our offensive system was and how bend but don't break our defense was, and we all love Patrick, right? But still, if we could just have a middle of the pack offense and defense, and that's not what we're hoping for down the road, but what we're building, as Carl likes to say, we're building something, man, I mean, in that division. So I don't know if Carl, this is a good segue, but anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Well, wrapping that up quickly, you pressure the quarterback, it's less time that our secondary has to cover these receivers.
Yeah.
So you pressure the quarterback, you bring pressure, you blitz, whatever you do, you scheme, you bring pressure on the quarterback, and you can actually cover up some of the deficiencies and the lack of coverage ability that you have in the secondary. So there is some play there.
One thing I'd like to add as well, when you're talking about the Matt Judon, as far as last year he had in Baltimore to the first year he had in New England, I think we got to give Giant fans a little heads up. Do not expect the 12, 13, 14 sack guy with Wings defense. That's not what it is.
Correct.
It's a defense that forces the quarterback to throw the ball early and hopefully make mistakes.
There you
So
go.
all these guys hoping for Kayvon having a rookie season of, I heard like crazy 10 sack numbers of expectations. That's not the defense. What you got to hope is he gets a whole bunch of hurries and a whole bunch of knockdowns. That's what you want. That's what determines success for these guys.
Yes, interceptions.
Yeah.
Quarterback hits, quarterback pressures, quarterback hits. If you
I'm looking forward to this defense.
Yeah.
And I think some of the kids that were drafted in the past, and look, I think there's some guys that just aren't going to make it, but like Ellerson, who was drafted last year, we've almost forgotten about. Apparently, this kid's come back with like 20 pounds of muscle. He still looks skinny, but he's a monster.
I think he's going to be like number 4 on our pass rushers probably at that point, or at least to start the year, because you're going to have obviously, Kayvon Thibodeau, who I'm excited to see. I think he's going to tick off a lot of people that didn't draft from the first couple spots beforehand, especially those people down in Jacksonville. But you also have obviously Ojulari, who had a great rookie year last year.
Yeah,
you got Quincy Roche, who I think Steeler fans are shooting themselves for ever letting that guy go. So he's going to start off at number 4. He's going to be our Kiwanuka basically.
And we still got Leonard Williams, who just 2 seasons. He's only 2 seasons removed from a phenomenal year.
And he still made his presence felt last year. People forget defensive tackle, same as we're talking about with the edge guys now in Wink's defense. You can't judge a tackle based on sacks.
Right.
That's just people that don't know football.
Right.
This guy went in and made a difference every single game. And talk about a guy who kept playing hard. Like there's games where the games were over and the guy was still pushing.
What did Ojulari have last year? 8 sacks?
I think 8.5 sacks, right?
So 8, and he pretty much hit the rookie wall. So let's get a full season out of him. And look, and again, I agree with you, Andrew. I don't expect anybody on this defense having 20 sacks, anything like that. I just want to see pressure. What I want to see are uncomfortable quarterbacks, to use Steve.
He had 8 sacks last year.
8 sacks. It was 8 sacks. Okay.
And I think he set the Giant rookie record.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
With an asterisk, because LT did not get that record only because they didn't count a sack that year.
Right.
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So, yeah, it's again, we have hope. How good is it to be a Giant fan and have hope again? So, with that, let's get into the fun part of this show now, Andrew. This is Steve and I have actually come to love this part of the show, and here's where the sense of humor comes out. So,
okay.
So I'm going to go through the schedule. I'm going to list the week, the opponent, where it's at, and then you tell me win or loss. Okay.
You get it.
So week 1 at Tennessee.
Well, I think I'm just glad it's not Dallas again, but I mean, we're not going to win against Tennessee probably. Unfortunately, I hate to say it. I think it'll be a closer game than you would have thought based on last year because they don't have any receivers anymore, but they're still a better team.
Week 2 home opener against Carolina and Baker Mayfield.
I'm just glad we got a home opener against a team we can win against. I got that one as a win, but I'll tell you this. Give Baker a few weeks in Carolina towards the end of the year. Cleveland's going to wish they hadn't done that move.
Well, I'm glad it's after we play them. Week 3, Monday night, home against Dallas. Here we go, Steve. Let the fun begin.
I think we all know how we do on primetime games, especially in the Daniel Jones years. You're playing a Cowboys team that I hate to say it is much better. We're losing.
I agree. Just because it's Monday night, we are terrible at prime time.
Mm-hmm.
You think the Cowboys are better than they were last year?
What's that?
Andrew, you think that the Cowboys are going to be better this year than they were last year?
Oh, no. They're a better team than us, though, still.
Oh, gotcha.
But they're definitely much worse than last year with a couple losses there. And I also think you're going to see a potential sophomore slump for a certain star there.
Yeah, I hope you're right. Where am I? Week 4, home versus Chicago.
We're winning. The Bears. We're gonna win against the Bears.
You know what? So far, he's right in line with us, Steve. We're all been saying, boy, if we can come out of the first 4 weeks 2-2, we're in good shape.
And think, like I said earlier, think now. What's the mindset of some of these young kids?
Yeah. Hey, we got something here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the messaging from the coaching staff. Listen, if they do lose those 2 games, look at the teams we lost against. How did they lose? I'm just saying.
My whole thing is we got to at least keep it close with Dallas if we can, because that's going to be the big mindset thing. So you got to figure Dallas can be the top of the division. So if we can at least hang with them, it kind of gives them a little bit. I don't want to say losing is ever a morality win, but it's almost like when we almost beat the Patriots that last game of this, against that first Eli run there. I mean, it's just like sometimes you hang with a good team, and it makes you realize you do belong.
Look, here's my point on moral victories. I just came through a Ranger season where they fell short in the playoffs, and everybody's saying, well, that's great because they went further than we all expect. No. We got to the playoffs. I want to win. So I don't want to hear about moral victories, but I understand your point. Anyway, let's go.
Did I mention I'm in Tampa Bay?
I was really hoping you didn't remind me of that. Week 5, Green Bay in London.
We're going to bloody lose that game.
Yes, we bloody are. I just hope we don't come out of it bloody. Week 6, here you go. This is going to be a fun one. Week 6, home versus Baltimore.
That's going to be a fun one. Like I said, a win coming back there. But again, that's just a better team. I don't see us winning that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Week 7. No, this is Steve's game. Week 7 at Jacksonville.
This is my game as well. I'm looking at going actually. I'm definitely thinking we're going to win this, and it's going to be a fun game considering how bad that squad is. That's the real moral booster right there. If we can really crush them and get everybody, on that kind of ideal is, we can defeat a team, we can really embarrass them.
Steve, I'm not going to go any further. Week 8 at Seattle.
Another win.
Andrew came to play tonight. All right, so week 9's a bye. Week 10, coming off the bye at Houston.
And a win. This is what I'm saying. It's such a soft schedule this year. I'm loving it.
They got a good quarterback, though.
Yes, they do. And we are not good coming off buys.
He easily would have been the top quarterback this year in the draft if he was in this year's draft.
I would have been the top quarterback in this draft. That's not saying much. Come on, man.
He's a very, very good young quarterback.
He's an okay quarterback.
With a bad cast, he actually did pretty good last. Steve, I agree with you. He's sneaky good.
But also look what that team drafted this year and everything. Some of the draft picks are just like, this other guy was there. No, but I'm saying that's part of the team, though. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
They're not going to be as good. Plus, obviously, coaching issues there.
Week 11, home versus Detroit.
And a win again.
Oh boy. Okay. Big guy, here we go. Week 12, Thanksgiving Day at Dallas.
And we're gonna lose again. Listen, I'm gonna have so much whiskey with my turkey this year. It's not even funny. Okay, we might as well just go ahead and pour a whole bottle of Jack Daniels.
Let me ask you a question, Andrew.
Yeah,
because you very, very quickly and easily said in both situations we lost, and I was listening very carefully. You said the class of the division. I couldn't disagree more if I heard you correctly, because I think Philadelphia far and away is the class of the division.
Agreed.
And it hurts so much to say that because F Dallas, F Philadelphia. Do you think Dallas is better than Philly? I mean, we're going to find out how you play out the wins and losses anyway, but do you think Dallas is better than Philly?
I think Philly really had, a great year last year getting to the playoffs the way they did. And I hate to say that. Any kudos I give to Philly just hurts me on the inside a little bit there. But, in the end, I don't think they have the QB still. I really just don't. And that's the difference, is that when you look at this division, the only one team that you can say that has the QB is Dallas. Is he elite? Is he top 5? Is he MVP? No. But he's a legitimate above average quarterback.
Okay.
Yeah. Shut me up too. I was kind of speechless there, Steve. Okay. We'll expand on that as we go further here. Week 13, home versus Washington.
We're gonna win.
No respect for Carson. No respect for Carson Wentz.
No, I actually think Carson's better than a lot of people think he is. The problem is he has all the physical tools, none of the mental.
He had a good year in Indy last year, actually.
Yeah, ask the fans in Jacksonville what they think of him.
Oh boy. Okay. Here we go, tough guy. You ready?
Go for it.
Week 14, home versus Philadelphia.
We're gonna win at home against them.
Oh, Steve, you have to give the boy points for being consistent.
Andrew, your lips to God's ears.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Okay. Week 15 at Washington.
I think Daniel Jones continues his success against DC, whatever name you want to give them, depending on what year he's playing them. But yeah, he's gonna command them again.
Okay. Look, I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right.
Yeah. We're writing this down. We have this on film. Week 16, Christmas Eve day at Minnesota.
We're gonna lose.
Okay. Week 17, New Year's Day, home for Indianapolis.
We're gonna lose. Indy's still a good team. I think Matt Ryan's gonna shock some people with how good he plays there.
I don't disagree with you. And they got Jonathan Taylor.
Oh,
Who's their backup?
I'm sorry, Steve?
Who's their backup QB? Brissett or no?
No,
Brissett's over in Cleveland now.
Who's Indy's backup?
Do not know that.
Yeah, I don't even know off the top of my head either.
I'm thinking by that point, Ryan won't even make it through a full season. And
got a good offensive line in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and statistically the best running back in football last year. But
we'll see.
Just saying.
If Carson Wentz can play a whole season behind that offensive line, I think Matt Ryan can too.
Well, I think Carson Wentz is about 20 years younger than Matt Ryan at this point here. I mean, but still, Matt Ryan's just a good quarterback, and he's smart enough to throw the ball away as opposed to getting hit by 10 people at once. So
Don't forget they lost their second best offensive lineman. He's on our team now.
He's on our team. Yeah, he's playing for us now.
yeah, don't forget their best though is still considered the best guard in all of football.
When he's healthy, he was hurt last year. Yeah.
That was last year.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
And he's a Jersey boy. I got. You know what? I won't root for the Colts per se, but you got to remember that boy's a Jersey boy.
No, look, man, we should have drafted him, but like you said earlier,
Yeah.
that's a
Homedale.
conversation for another
Home-
day.
Homedale.
Over the bridge.
Yep.
Okay. And then last but not least, let's see what you're made of here, Andrew. Week 18, possible playoff spot on the line in Philadelphia.
We're gonna lose.
Yes, we are.
And you know what the scary thing is? I don't even know where I'm at here, win the loss. I didn't want to tally it myself. I didn't want that to change my idea of what we're going to win, what we're going to lose.
I got 9, Carl.
I'm with you, Steve. 9, and 8.
Yeah.
So you know what? In all of that, Steve, he's actually fallen in line with pretty much
Yeah.
the rest of us. We've all been saying that sweet spot is anywhere between 6 and 8. So he's one game off.
I think one person had 10 wins.
Yes, one person did have 10 wins. You're
A few
right.
people had 8. And
Yes,
I don't think he's the only one to have 9. So yeah, you're right within that range.
yes.
Yeah.
Brian Porras had 10.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, that's the teams we should beat. Now, we all know one or two of those bad teams we play will probably also potentially lose because we're a bad team ourselves, at least historically the last couple of years here. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm thinking if we can get between 7 and 9, I'm happy.
Listen, we had one of the worst teams in the league the last couple of years. Remember, was it 2 years ago? We beat Seattle with Russell Wilson in Seattle. Nobody wins in Seattle, and we won. I mean,
our backup quarterback.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, at the end of that schedule is just brutal.
Yeah.
You got that soft spot there in the middle, but boy, the end of that schedule, Philadelphia, twice in the last, 5 weeks is just, that's not right.
But you know what, though? You kind of want it that way because if you want to build them around, we can get through, like we're all saying, about 2-2 or so the first 4 games, and then go through that stretch of going through the Bears, the Lions, the Texans, the Jaguars. You're talking like this is most teams would sign me up for that schedule in a heartbeat. That's the soft spot there that most teams wish they had.
My biggest fear with that is that they've got momentum going into that game with some of those softer games, and then they get blown out, and it just all comes crumbling down. I don't want to look. I am very excited about the team, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's just my biggest fear right now, facing that. And then that starts the whole house of cards falling for the rest of the season.
The thing that worries me is I think we're one of the youngest teams in the league. I think the third youngest. And that excites me because hopefully if we have the staff that we hope we have, irrespective of Daniel Jones, just the rest of the team, we're going to see improvement week by week in that first half of the season. The problem is we have such a young team. We're probably going to rely on a lot of rookies. And what tends to happen in the NFL, if you're a student of history, Carl, you use the exact phrase, you hit that rookie wall. So Thibodeau, any of these guys, I mean, they've never played an NFL season before, and it happens year after year after year. It's what happens to rookies. They're becoming grown-ass men, and they've never played an NFL season. It's going to take its toll. So I think they're smart enough to know, even if they use the rookies a lot in the beginning, to not lean on them too heavy, which is why, even like Carl, you said a Cordell Flott. No, don't start him. Like wean these kids into the league. Let them learn the players.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about matchups. It's all about tendencies. Let them become students of the game. Don't like Aziz. It was so much fun last year, but he disappeared for stretches, He
did. Yes, he did.
He's physically a beast. And that's the other thing. He's come back like with 15 pounds of muscle or something. Beast mode. So I think it's going to be an awesome year, but we have to temper our expectations with wins, right? So
we also got to temper it based on this schedule, I think, to a certain degree. When I see 7 to 9 wins, that's because of this schedule. That's not because this is a mediocre average team. This is still a bad team. So we still got to hope that we become a mediocre team, not go, okay, we won 7 wins because we beat, the Lions and the Texans and the Jaguars. Like, in reality, I think most teams, even an average team with this kind of schedule, is going to have 10, 11, 12 wins. So if we do 7 to 9 wins like I'm expecting, that doesn't mean we're all of a sudden an average team. We're just a team that won the games we should have won and took advantage of an easy schedule.
Yeah.
If anything, that just says to me that, you know what, it's coming together. Again, we're going in the right direction. We've turned the corner, and better things are to come. And again, I'm in this for the long haul. So, give me that, and then we win 7 games this year. Let's say we win 9, 10 next year. Maybe we're wild cards. That's how this whole thing built back in the day when we were winning Super Bowls. So, I'll sign up for that again.
Look, think how we felt Daniel's rookie year at the end there, the game against Tampa Bay, right? But like, he had all the turnovers, but he was a rookie thrown into it probably far sooner than he should have, under Pat Shermer, slinging it. That was the kid I think that we wanted when we drafted. And then we just had to fix those turnovers, right? The fumbles, the stupid interceptions. But think about how excited we were with a young Saquon, with him. And then it was, okay, let's just continue to build around that, to rebuild the offensive line. And then it all came falling apart, right? The last 2 seasons. So I think there's a lot to be hopeful for, but it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out, guys.
Andrew, this was a lot of fun tonight.
Oh yeah, had a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. We appreciate you following us. And again, you asked some great questions, and you had some great supporting data to get behind it. So we really appreciate this. We thank you so much. Steve, as always, another great night, great episode again. And again, everybody, we thank you all for following us. We thank you for your continued support, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Guys, thank you so much. Great job tonight.